Okay, so like, have you ever found yourself stuck? Like really stuck trying to make a decision. And it's not even like a big life-changing thing. It's something totally small.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, should I get that extra shot of espresso? Will I regret it later? You know those moments.
Totally. Happens to me all the time.
Well, that's kind of what we're diving into today, this idea of how to escape those mental loops and actually feel good about the decisions we make, big or small. No more decision fatigue, just clear skies and like just feeling confident moving forward.
And what's so interesting about the guide we're looking at today is it starts by addressing this idea that's often ingrained in us, that there's always one right decision.
Oh, yeah.
And that can be really paralyzing.
It's so true. Like, I was just trying to figure out what to watch on which streaming service, and honestly, they all had something decent. So this whole idea, like the guide calls it out, that they're even I asks a right answer. It's kind of freeing to let that go.
It is incredibly freeing. In fact, the source really stresses that most of our decisions, especially those everyday ones, aren't even about finding that one right answer. It's really more about choosing from a bunch of options that are probably all fine.
They're all pretty good, yeah.
Right. It's more like a sliding scale than a right or wrong.
So it's less about finding the perfect and more about good enough, right?
Yeah,
And that's where I think this whole 70% rule comes in, right?
exactly.
This guide we're talking about, it basically says if a choice feels about 70% right, go for it. Don't overthink it.
Yeah. That 70% rule is huge because it really is the antidote to this pressure we put on ourselves to make the absolute best choice every single time. I mean, think about it. How many times have you literally agonized over a decision and then later it just didn't even matter?
Oh, constantly. Like what I'm wearing, I'm going to spend way too long staring at my closet when I could just be like, okay, this feels kind of good. Moving on.
That's it. That's that 70% rule. And it just allows you to loosen that grip of always needing to know for sure because you never really can.
You can't. It's like trying to chase a unicorn, right? And speaking of elusive things, this guide also talks about intuition.
Yes, that gut feeling.
Right, that inner voice.
Right.
Is it a magical compass or what is going on there?
That's right. It's often portrayed as this sort of magical guide. But the source we are looking at takes a more nuanced approach to intuition, which is really important.
It's true. It's like that friend who sometimes gives amazing advice and you're like, yes, you get me. And then other times you're like, why did I listen to you? This is a disaster.
Yeah.
So how do we know when to trust that gut feeling and when to maybe be like, okay, let's think about this a little more?
Well, it's all about context.
Okay.
For those really small, quick decisions like what to have for lunch or which route to take to work, our gut feeling can be a really helpful shortcut.
So I don't have to overanalyze my lunch order.
Right. No need to map out every single route to work. But when it comes to those big life choices,
Yeah.
career changes, relationships, investments, that's really where it's crucial to balance that initial gut feeling with a little bit more, careful thought, gathering more information.
So it's not about silencing that inner voice. It's just maybe not letting it always have the mic.
Exactly. I think of it as your gut feeling might give you that initial sort of starting point.
Yeah.
When it comes to those bigger decisions, you want to make sure that it also aligns with, what are your long-term goals and values, and really have a conversation with that inner voice.
It's a process.
Yes. Don't just blindly follow.
It's like, all right, inner voice, what are we thinking? Let's bring in some backup here. But I think, even when we do try to think things through, sometimes we just get stuck. Like our brains just hit the snooze button on making a decision.
Oh, for sure. And especially when we're talking about bigger decisions.
Yeah.
The ones that feel like they really have an impact.
Huge impact.
It can be really daunting. And that's where the what ifs come in, right?
So many what ifs.
Yeah.
It's like a mountain of what ifs.
It is. And this guide we're talking about today, it really acknowledges that. And it talks about instead of trying to make this like giant leap, how about we break these massive decisions down into smaller steps?
Okay, I like where we're going here.
Yeah.
So like instead of saying, should I move across the country? Ask yourself, well, would I even like the weather there?
Yes, exactly. Can I see myself building a life there?
Yeah.
Something like that. So instead of this big, huge question, you've got these smaller, more concrete things to think about.
It feels more manageable that way.
Exactly. It's like taking those stepping stones.
Sure. Okay, I love that. So we're breaking things down, but sometimes even then you still get stuck, right?
Right.
And that's where I think this guide throws in a very interesting curveball. It talks about the 5-second rule.
Yes.
Have you heard of this?
Oh, yeah, the 5-second rule. I feel like I've heard people using that for Everything.
For everything from getting out of bed
Yes,
to finally starting that big project.
totally.
But like, how does it actually work? Is it just like a magic trick?
Well, I don't know about magic, but it
Mhm.
really does tap into something kind of powerful in our brains.
Oh,
Because essentially, our brains, they love comfort.
of course.
They are wired for it, and they want to avoid discomfort, which means when we hesitate,
Yeah.
when we overthink, when we delay, it's often our brain trying to, like, protect us.
Stay on the couch.
Exactly. Don't do the scary thing.
Yeah.
But with the 5-second rule, it's so simple. And what it does is it's sort of like you're short-circuiting that overthinking cycle.
So it's like before your brain can even catch up,
Exactly.
you're already doing the thing.
You're doing it and you're breaking free.
I love that this guide is all about action. Like, stop overthinking, just do.
Yes, and it actually takes it a step further than just the 5-second rule. It talks about this idea that often action brings clarity.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
I have been stuck, not knowing where to go, what to do, and it's not until you actually take that first step that things even start to become clear.
Exactly. It's like we can think and analyze and hypothesize all day long, but until we actually dip our toes in,
Get in the water.
yes, we won't really know.
It's like, you got to get out of your head, right? You can't figure it all out in there.
You can't.
But speaking of things we carry around in our heads, one thing this guide talks about is regret
Ooh, yeah.
and how to reframe that.
That's a big one.
Because that feeling, it can be such a drag.
It can be really heavy.
All those what ifs and shoulda, coulda, wouldas.
Yes, all that baggage.
Yeah.
But what if we could actually use that? What if we could turn it into something good?
Turn it into a positive.
Yes. And that's what this guide really encourages. It's like, think about your past decisions, even the ones you might regret. Think of those as like information.
Instead of mistakes.
Exactly.
They're lessons.
They're data points.
Yeah.
And they're telling you something about yourself, about what you value, what you want more of, maybe what you want less of in your life.
Yeah. So it's all part of the bigger picture.
It is.
And maybe you can't even see the bigger picture until you have those pieces, the good, the bad, well, that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's
Yeah.
such a good way to put it. It's like all those twists and turns, even if at the time they felt like a wrong turn,
Yeah.
they brought you to where you are now.
Exactly.
And they gave you wisdom and resilience.
It's like instead of saying, ugh, I so regret that, it's like, okay, that taught me this, and now I can use that moving forward.
Exactly.
So speaking of moving forward, this guide wraps up with this really great point, which is that making decisions, it's not like some people are born good at it and some people aren't. It's a skill. You can build it.
It's like a muscle.
Yes.
The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
Exactly. And you don't have to start with these monumental life decisions to practice. Start small.
Yeah, just be more intentional about those little everyday choices.
Totally. Order something different at your favorite restaurant. Try a new route home.
Switch up your morning routine.
Yeah, those little things, they make a difference.
They really do.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're building that confidence.
You're building that trust in yourself.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here today.
We have.
But ultimately, what I'm taking away from this is that we really do have the power to make choices that align with what we want in our life.
We do.
We don't have to be ruled by indecision or weighed down by those past choices. And honestly, just recognizing that, that's freeing.
It is. And it's about finding that joy, that freedom in the journey.
It's not about being perfect. It's about trying, learning, and seeing where you end up. So as you go about your day, your week, your life, remember that you have everything you need within you. Trust yourself, make the choice, and see what happens.